Hey, if you watched our recent coreCAST, you'll see a interview we had with Scott. And after that little interview, we had another conversation, and Scott was just laying down so much knowledge. I said, Scott, we've got to get together and have a full conversation because this stuff is golden. These are things that I've never thought about, and I usually think about things like this. And so today we have with us again Scott Yarbro, president of Firearms Legal Protection, and he is going to basically take us through the nightmare scenario of what happens when you have to use your gun to defend yourself, or when you don't have to use your gun to defend yourself. How does his service? How is it going to get you through that dark time? So, thank you so much, Scott, for joining us. And from there, I'll turn everything over to you.
Thanks, Joel. Appreciate that. Kind of wanted to explain. We talked a little bit about our services before and what we are as a company, but a lot of people don't understand why they would have a need for us in the first place, or how much are the odds that something event is going to happen to them. And so, kind of wanted to go through a couple cases that we've had of actual members that have our coverage and how things transpired for them. So first one, I'm going to start out, and again, none of these stories are intended to scare anybody. It's just from generally what you see on the news to what actually happens, there can be some discrepancies, and people really want to understand why things happen the way that they do. So start out with one of our members that is located in Texas, and I'll change some of the names around just so we don't have to worry about the members. But this was a pretty simple story that a lot of people were really interested in based on the news coverage on it. So we had one of our members, Chris, that was having dinner at a restaurant in a shopping center type atmosphere with one of his buddies. He left dinner, came out into the parking lot, and it was a little bit later in the evening. But when he did come out the parking lot, he saw a man and a woman getting into it, both verbally and then it turning to a physical altercation. So Chris was an actual license to carry holder in the state of Texas, did have his firearm on him, and went up to the couple and said, "Hey, what are you guys doing?" Trying to de-escalate the scene that was in front of him. So when he did, the male figure turned to him and said, "Hey, buddy, mind your own business. This has nothing to do with you." Shortly after that, he saw him grab the woman aggressively, and Chris said, "Stop now, or I'm going to call the police." So after that, the guy said again, nothing, and Chris went ahead, called 911. Well, as soon as Chris got the phone out, the male let go of the female and charged aggressively at Chris. So at this point, we can all realize that the female was probably in danger in the situation. But past that, now we have an aggressive male coming after Chris, and Chris became in fear for his life to the point where Chris said, "Stop, I have a gun, I'm not afraid to use it." And the guy still came at him, causing Chris to draw his gun and shoot to stop the aggressive behavior. So on paper, a lot of us can look at this and go, "Hey, justified shoot. Don't really know any other way it could go." A lot of people are like, "Hey, Chris was the hero in the situation, started out by coming in to defend a woman and then ended up using deadly force to defend himself." And so people are like, "Great, cops are going to come, take the bad guy away. Chris goes home for the evening." But that's not exactly how things went down. So when cops did arrive to the scene, they had eyewitnesses of several different people who identified who Chris was in the scenario, who the other actors were. And at that time, they went ahead and placed Chris under arrest and took him to the local jail. And most people were quite confused why he was the one arrested. But the long and short of it is simply that he did use deadly force, and it's not actually the officer's job to figure out if he was justified for that or not. We've got a whole court system that goes down that path to discuss that and figure that out. And so Chris was taken to jail, had to go after that and get an attorney, which we provided him. After that, in the state of Texas, a lot of our cases go before a grand jury to decide how they're going to continue to go forward. And in this scenario, Chris had representation from one of our attorneys, went to the grand jury. The grand jury did decide not to indict him. So basically, they said, "Hey, this was a justified shoot based on all the evidence. Everything checks out." Well, what a lot of people don't realize is for our attorney to go and represent Chris in this scenario in front of a grand jury, just the beginning stages of this, was over $25,000 in attorney fees for Chris. And so most people were like, "Wow, I mean, great that he had a service like FLP, but that's a lot of money coming out. I'm glad things were over." And that's not where things were over, because if you paid any attention to things on the news, you've realized that criminal is just one side of the fight after the fight that you have when you lawfully defend yourself. The next stage is the civil side of things. And most people were like, when we talk about the story, who in the world would come back and sue Chris civilly? And the simple answer was multiple came out to sue. So the first one that people can mostly guess is going to be the male in the situation. And so what the story was is, boyfriend and girlfriend got into an altercation in the parking lot. Girlfriend tried to leave the situation. Boyfriend said, "No, you're not going with me." And all this was supplied to police the night of the actual shooting. But since then, the stories have changed, as they often do. And so for Chris, he was now faced with one civil lawsuit of the guy that he shot. And it wasn't a case of what he did was right or wrong. It was now a case of, if the guy he shot, did he have to go get medical treatment? Did he have to go through different things because of the fact that Chris shot him? So very different standards in civil court than there are criminal court, as well as the other person that came back to sue him was the girlfriend. So kind of classic one of these cases that you see boyfriend and girlfriend get back together after one of these incidents. Whether she was approached by someone else or not, her story changed to they were just roughhousing in the parking lot. This guy came out of nowhere, shot my boyfriend, and she's emotionally traumatized for it. So either way, it wasn't something that Chris had to worry about that much, simply because he did have our coverage, which again is uncapped coverage, both criminal and the civil side of things, where we had his civil attorneys paid for from the very beginning to the very end. He was out a little bit of time for work and going to court, but besides that, it was pretty textbook on how we like to be able to handle cases for our members.
So Scott, I've got a question about that case. How long had he been a member of FLP up to that point, to where he
I
had
think
to
Chris was
exercise?
still in his first year of membership.
My goodness. Yeah, that's basically, I know this is not insurance, but it works on the same principle of, hey, the more people you get involved in a plan like this, the less likely it's going to happen, which means that, all that money can be actually used for these cases, even though, these cases may be going up as the insanity increases. Still, you're going to, as long as you have more people paying in, that than have using the service, it's going to be a good deal. I mean, that's literally how insurance works.
Absolutely, and we're pretty much the same. We're also, we're prepaid in some states, insurance in other states, but we operate the same way. And it is like insurance, and our goal is to reach out and get in front of as many law-abiding Americans who'd like to have this kind of service. So again, they're not worried about the fight after the fight, how they're going to be able to handle that.
Right. Yeah, that's amazing. So this guy, I mean, basically, this guy, if he were, to purchase your service in a gun store at the time of purchasing his gun, he walks out and this happens, he's covered.
Oh,
Right?
absolutely. And that's kind of
Okay.
an interesting point that you bring up is, a lot of people hear about our services in actual license to carry courses, license courses of the state that they're in. But another very popular avenue of this is hearing about it over the counter when they go to buy a firearm. And it's one of the things that, it's very natural to be able to say, hey, I'm getting a gun for self-defense. What else do I need with that? So most people, look at getting, whether it's, ammunition, holster, any other accessories for the firearm. One that commonly overlooked is some sort of legal protection if that day comes when you actually have to lawfully defend yourself.
Yeah, that's an invaluable service as far as I'm concerned, and with the convenience to be able to, purchase a plan right there at the register, so that when you walk out with that gun or, firearm, you're covered. Do you have any more, scenarios that you can take us through? Maybe some things that we haven't thought about, because everybody knows, by now, they know that, yeah, when you exercise your right and defend yourself with a firearm, and you end up shooting someone or killing someone, there are going to be repercussions. I mean, if you think about it, if the legal system is not protecting police officers, and no matter what you think, they've got a target on their back. You don't. And you see the legal system, or you see all these movements coming out when a police officer exercises that deadly force. If they're going to do that to cops, they're absolutely going to do that to you. I mean, because you and they'll use that. They'll say, "Well, you're not a police officer," which is even more insanity. But do you have any other scenarios that you can share with us to, kind of highlight some of the things that maybe we're not thinking about?
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point, what you just said, you obviously see how the scrutiny goes through with law enforcement and getting involved in shootings. Like you said, it's going to be that, if not worse, for our members. But the crucial thing with that is most law enforcement officers have access to these resources. They're not going to be left stranded without legal attorney coverage. They're going to have psychological counseling support. They're going to have a lot of things that are right there at their disposal, to where your normal everyday citizen is going to be completely clueless as to what next steps are. But that's another big thing that we get asked a lot is, okay, hey, we see the value of this service if I got involved in a shooting. And, obviously there's a chance for it, or they probably wouldn't have a firearm or other legal weapon to protect themselves. But there's a lot of other cases that we have an experience with members that don't even involve a discharge of a firearm. So again, another case that we had more in a rural area outside of Dallas Fort Worth. We had a homeowner. This guy's a little bit more advanced with age, lives alone on his property, and came upon a group of underage kids who were drinking on his property. So he pulled up in his truck, got out of his truck, and they're 5 kids, all underage, drinking on his property. And he says, "Hey guys, you got to get out of here. You don't belong here." Well, these kids, being kids, decided to snap back and tell them, basically to go shove it, and they're going to do what they want to do. So we can already tell by this scenario, 1 against 5 isn't good odds for anybody. Older versus younger can play a factor into this. But either way, the old man was not going to sit here and just say, fine, I'm going to get in my truck and leave. So he understood the laws. He knew what he was doing in the state that he was in, and he went back to his truck and retrieved a shotgun out of self-defense. And so it's very different in every single state, but in the state of Texas, just having a gun isn't deadly force. Pointing a gun at somebody, automatically deadly force. And so he was very aware of these laws, but also wanted to make sure that he could have a leg to stand on to be able to get these kids who are trespassing off his property. So he went back to his pickup truck, got a shotgun, and kept the gun pointed at the ground the entire time, walked back up and said, "You guys need to leave right now." And the kids then saw the shotgun, freaked out, dropped their beers, and then ran down the street, hopped the fence, and left. And so homeowners thinking, problem solved. Kids are off his property. He's got a little bit of mess to clean up, but besides that, the situation's been resolved. What he didn't understand is the 5 kids, as they were running down the street, one of them got the bright idea to call 911. And what a lot of people don't understand is the first person to call 911 in a perfect scenario is normally the victim. So what do we have? We have a kid calling 911 saying, "Hey, there's this crazy old man waving a gun at everybody walking by his property. You should send police out to see what's going on." So 911 operator obviously takes that call, fields it out to the officers responding, and they show up, and what do they find? They find homeowner there with a truck and with a shotgun, kind of everything adding up to this phone call that was called in to 911. And so they go and get his side of the story, and he's like, no, I never pointed a gun at anybody. This is what they were doing. Look over here. Here's the beer cans. So we were left with a classic he said, she said situation. And what a lot of people don't understand is how that's going to move forward. Is a lot of officers these days aren't going to pick and choose what story to believe. It's easiest on them just to go ahead and arrest everybody. And again, they're not the ones that are trying to figure out who's at fault. Their job is to gather that evidence correctly, put it over to the court systems for them to figure out how to go forward. And so this was a case where, again, the firearm was never discharged. It was simply a use of force to be able to stop trespass on his land. But now we have this individual who needs to have attorney representation to go to court to figure all this out. So luckily for him, of the 5 kids, one of them decided that, facing these criminal charges weren't worth it, and maybe he should make a plea deal to tell the real story in order to grant immunity for himself, which is what happened. So one of the kids did testify that, yes, the homeowner never pointed a gun at them. He had the gun, which he was clearly had the right to do. And once that story came out, all charges were dropped against the homeowner, our member. But he still experienced tens of thousands of dollars worth of legal fees that we picked up as Firearms Legal Protection. But the whole thing that transpired, like again, I said, none of this happened from actually discharging the firearm.
Yeah, I've got a similar nightmare scenario. It didn't end up in an arrest or anything, but this was probably, I'm thinking, 10 years ago. And I was a little bit more active in the firearms community as far as training, and um, I mean, I carried a gun regularly.
Sure.
I mean, I always had a gun on me, and I was in my backyard, didn't have my gun, which is really really eerie how all this played out. I was in my backyard. My I just got this dog, who you could tell was abused. So he was a rescue. How people say, well, he rescued me. My dog rescued me, but whose name is Glock now. But
Okay.
so Glock's in the backyard, just a little puppy. He was kind of learning to trust people again, and these kids, I have a fence in my backyard, and these kids were throwing trash over my fence. And I mean, I don't live in the nicest part of town, but I mean, we're not like that. I mean, just
Yeah.
walk around throwing trash. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so I came out and confronted the kids. I'm like, hey, can you guys not, throw anything? This dog's, I don't know if you can tell, but he's been abused. And their parents came out. I think they were having a party, so it was multiple kids, and there were multiple sets of parents. Their parents came out, and I heard a little girl say, "He's got a gun," and I was thinking, why in the world would anyone even say that?
Yep.
I don't have a gun, first of all, right? It was my day off. I wasn't, I don't carry a gun on my day off. As a matter of fact, I was stupid. I remember leaving the gun in the vehicle. So, which I never do, but I thank God I did that time, because what happened was the parents came out and said, it just started escalating. And then somebody mentioned the police. I said, yeah, call them. I don't mind if you call the police. I mean, you're throwing stuff in my backyard. Man, I'm telling you, police showed up. I had a pretty good relationship with the local police department, so they knew me. And it was like, man, this makes no sense to me. And they're like, well, we know you have a gun. I said, yeah, it's in my vehicle, and then they kind of peeked over and saw the gun in the floorboard. And I'm like, man, this is just crazy. And if I would have had a gun, right? Or if multiple people would have said, he has a gun and he was pointing it at us, I would have been in the same boat as that old man on his property.
Absolutely.
So, man, even you don't even have to have a gun.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Let's say I was arrested and I have your protection. Would I be able to use that?
Oh, absolutely.
Even if I didn't use my gun?
Yep. Absolutely.
Okay.
That's the whole thing with this is we want to be there to protect our members at the moment something happens. And so
Right.
we've been experiencing this, a lot lately. It comes up a lot with other cases such as road rage, where somebody's like, he waved a gun at me, and they would have really no idea if they did or didn't, but it's just a common thing that people like to say. And so
Right.
again, it's not just for the coverage of just firearms. It's when you're lawfully defending yourself, or if you're going to be in a situation where you need additional help. That's where we're going to be able to come in. And so the difference with that is you being able to call our emergency hotline, which again is only answered by attorneys. That attorney's job is going to be able to figure out where you are, make sure you're safe, and then tell you exactly what to say, which is pretty much going to be shut up and wait for your attorney to arrive. And so we want to be there for our members with appropriate legal representation so they can move forward with their case.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's a crazy, crazy world we live in. So, and I don't understand how people can't see how fast things can go wrong. Every time I come across a video, which Twitter is huge, it's where I get most of my videos of shootings,
Yep.
which is weird, But I mean, I just recently saw a video of a guy walking. I think it was a bank, and he pulls a gun out and immediately starts shooting. And I think the guard, draws on him and gets a shot off and nicks him in his carotid artery, right?
Yeah.
And this guy, I mean, the video is pretty graphic. It's a standoffish video, but still, you can clearly see it is the most graphic it's the most graphic shooting I've ever seen, only because you're not going to immediately die.
Right.
You know what I mean? I mean, this guy was still shooting, a few seconds into, bleeding out. And then he gets in the little turnstile and he's done. But he did so much damage before that. And then you see we talked in the previous video about the young lady getting shot pushing the stroller, and I think they arrested her ex-boyfriend. So there was somebody known in that situation, but there's so many examples of just bad people using guns, and when you live in a country where you have the right to defend yourself with the firearm, you're going to have bad people with guns no matter what. So I think not only should you have training, you should also have this type of coverage.
Oh, yeah.
It makes no sense. And correct me if I'm wrong. Do you have to have a concealed carry permit to have this coverage from FLP?
Absolutely not. So that's where a lot of people do first find out about us when they're sitting through a licensing course or another firearms training course, just simply because, like you said, we believe people should have training. We should believe people should be responsible, and part of that responsibility is having some sort of legal protection. So you're covered whether you have a license to carry in your state. If you live in a state that's constitutional carry and doesn't require it, you're covered. We cover you at your home. We cover you at your place of business. We cover you anywhere where you can legally have that firearm. And to that point, it's not just a firearm. It's anywhere where you have a legal weapon, because here in the state of Texas, there's some restaurants and establishments that you can't carry in due to alcohol sales that are going on. And so, but they don't restrict you from carrying other weapons. And so we want to make sure that a member, if they lawfully defend themselves in any situation, that we're there to protect them in the fight after the fight.
So if I were coming out of a restaurant and I exercised my right to defend myself using mace, cops show up, I get arrested, you guys are on scene helping me.
Absolutely, and that's one that is growing in I hate saying popularity with our members, but we kind of look at it as great because a lot of our members are looking at less lethal force or options before having to go to lethal options. And so we've seen a rise of pepper spray and mace cases that have come up with our members simply because they wanted to be able to de-escalate. They weren't able to do it verbally, but they were able to do it with pepper spray or mace. And it's one of the things that people don't understand. The same line of events are going to happen afterwards to make sure that person, our member in this case, was lawfully justified in using less lethal force against another human.
Yeah, that's amazing that you guys offer that. And I think in your name, people aren't thinking, that they can actually call on you guys after they exercise their right to self-defense with pepper spray, baton, a chair.
Yeah.
Anything that they can use as a weapon to defend themselves. That's really neat. You guys, I know you, honestly, the first time I heard of you guys was in a range. So are you guys doing any advertising or is this just by word of mouth?
Really, I mean, our network of ranges and instructors are who we use to promote our product, because we want the person who you're taking a firearms class from to believe in our product, understand our product, and be able to explain why that coverage is so important to have for one of their students. I mean, it's one of the things that we don't want to scare people into buying our product. It's educational. People need to know there are scary things that happen why you will need our coverage, but we don't want people buying this out of fear. Our whole thing is that people have the peace of mind that if that awful day comes where they have to lawfully defend themselves, they don't have to worry about what's next. They're going to have all the resources necessary provided by FLP at their fingertips, and we're going to be able to step in and help.
Yeah, in an ideal world, it shouldn't be taboo to defend yourself.
Nope.
Or, I mean, it's just it's weird that it is taboo.
Yep.
Let me ask you this: if do you guys advertise, or do you have any deals with, like, I don't know, MMA gyms or like self-defense classes in that regard, as far as defending themselves? Can they? I mean, if obviously their body is not a gun, but if they defend themselves with their bodies, is that also covered?
Really, it's any sort of weapon. So that's what we tell people. If you're in that situation and you grab car keys or you grab a phone or something else and use that then we're able to be able to justify that as a lawful weapon in that case.
Wow. Yeah, that's really because that's the first thing that females are taught is to walk to their cars
Yep,
with their keys.
absolutely.
You know, yeah. And I'm not saying just females. I do the same thing. It's just these modern keys are square or there's no key at all, so you're kind of tapping them on the forehead with a
Yeah,
little key
hitting it with the
fob.
key fob's a little bit different than the house key. So, but yeah, that's something that
Yeah, it is.
we wanted everybody to, because the firearm community is obviously one of our big markets, but it's really the self defense community, and we want anybody at any stage that says, hey, I don't want to carry a gun. It's not something I'm interested in, but I'm going to carry mace or pepper spray or even a taser at this point because, I have young children and I want to make sure they're protected. So I want to have something. And, they go to the training to learn how to use those weapons. It's the same thing. We want them not to worry about the legal ramifications after lawfully using that.
So, Scott, do you have a nightmare scenario of someone using another, maybe one of your competitors? And I don't want you to use their name, and I know you don't want to use their name if you do, but where they had that coverage, but they, weren't covered the way that maybe they thought they would be when they went into it. I kind of want people to be able to juxtapose your service with maybe a competitor's, and in that nightmare scenario, how you would have been different.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, kind of like we were talking about earlier, put yourself in the situation where you're back in your backyard with your dog and you have your gun on you, right? And somebody were to hop your fence and come at you and threaten you, and you're in fear for your life. And so you drew your gun, and we'll just stop there. We won't even have to go what the next steps were, but up until that point, you're justified in using that display of force and deadly force. And so, you being a member of Firearms Legal Protection, your next step would be to call us at our emergency hotline number. And so, it's really important to understand how our hotline works versus others. And it's a hotline that is manned by only attorneys. So what happens is when you call and you start spinning every little last thing that comes out of your mouth on the situation, you're talking to an attorney, and that whole conversation is attorney-client privileged. So none of that is ever going to come out later on when you're in court. That is all between you and your attorney. So that's really important. The other thing is that once our attorneys answer the call and they're talking to you, they're going to say, hey, Joel, are you okay? Are you, and physically where you're at, are you okay? And you say, yes, I am. Next thing they're going to ask is, hey, where exactly are you? Because we know that where your house is located when you signed up for membership, but we have no idea if that's actually where you are. So we need to figure out where you are geographically located. And that attorney then is going to give you the legal advice of, hey, just go ahead and keep your mouth shut. We're sending out attorneys. We're going to walk you through, have everything taken care of. So now you know what you're going to say. You're waiting for your attorney to come. So then that attorney's job is to get off the phone with you and launch one of our local attorneys to the actual scene to be able to help you through all of this. So if you think about it right now, we have made no decisions as a company as far as FLP on a stance of coverage, other than the fact that we are covering. So right now, I don't know what your scenario is in your backyard. I don't know if it was the case where somebody did come at you and you were in fear for your life, or you were sick of people throwing trash in your yard and you went ahead and just wanted to draw your gun on somebody. But here's the thing, we're not going to take the time to figure that out. We're going to launch the attorney immediately. So some of the other options that are out there will go ahead and sit in round table, if you will. Hey, was Joel justified or not? Well, this may seem like a logical practice. Who knows when this situation happened? Because if this situation happened to you Friday night, not all of these companies are going to have these conversations over the weekend. And so what's going to happen is you're going to find yourself arrested. You're going to end up going to jail. And then you're going to go ahead and start talking nonstop. And we don't want to make it seem like it's a bad thing to talk to police, but if the police get involved in a shooting like we talked about earlier, they have X amount of time before they have to give their statements. They have certain sleep cycles they're going to go through. There are reasons for these things. So if our law enforcement should have the right to have that, our citizens should have that right too, which they do have. But unfortunately, so many just go ahead and give that up. And the real reason is, just like you, Joel, you're a good law-abiding citizen. You are in the right in your situation. So what do you want to do? You want to tell everybody how you were right. But unfortunately, a lot of those times you end up actually giving too much information, not structured the correct way, and that's not what we want. So we're never going to have one of our members have the ability to go and just go ahead and sit in jail over the weekend and wait for us to come back to work on Monday and say, hey, we're going to pick up this case with Joel. We're going to launch the attorney immediately. And then after that, we can make a coverage decision based on the facts that we uncover.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw the recent Supreme Court ruling in regards to if police can be sued if I think it was if they do not read you your Miranda rights and you start divulging all this information and they use that against you, they're not violating your constitutional rights. So they literally don't have to read you your Miranda rights if they arrest you. So it's like everything's turning against the law-abiding, Joe.
Yeah.
You just kind of want to. Maybe Joe's not the right word. Law-abiding Joel. We'll go with the law-abiding Joel. But man, it's just that's insanity. So to be able to have people like you that will immediately jump in and go to work for us, that's a really big deal, man. So do you have some maybe happy stories you can tell us of, hey, these people went through this, and if they would not have had our service, here's what they would have spent. I mean, I want to know, I want to see some national debt level expenditures on what you guys have done with some of your
Yeah,
members.
absolutely. Most of our members who actually discharge a firearm, whether or not that results in death of another or not, our typical cases are anywhere from $20,000 to $50,000 on average. Cases where they don't even pull the trigger are $10,000 to $20,000 easily. And a lot of these are straightforward cases. These are you in your backyard scenario, but instead of just Glock being there to testify, there was 3 other people, and everybody's got the same story. It's very obvious this is what they have to go through. Other cases that we've had weren't exactly that way, where, again, we go to the he said, she said, and once you end up going to court and to trial, it's not hard to get into 6-figure cases whatsoever.
Yeah, you think, and I think that probably 6-figure cases will probably increase with the way things are going. And again, I don't mean to be peeing on everybody's parade, but it is the way things are going. That the Rittenhouse trial really opened
Yep.
my eyes. You know what I mean? Because I was kind of veered in the wrong direction just listening to media. So with Rittenhouse, I mean that whole thing could have been lost in the media, right? So when he ends up in court, he's got to provide all these witnesses, which are not free. So how does your service, provide for, I don't know, expert witnesses or anything like that? Can you give us some features that maybe you offer that others don't?
I mean, a big thing is we talked about the biggest expense you're going to encounter is your attorney fees, criminal and civil, and that's uncapped in all of our plans. When you do go to our premium plan, which extends out to bail bond protection, another of the benefits that people don't think about is expert witness fees and investigators, because our attorneys need those sort of resources for the exact case you're talking about. Everybody has their own opinion on Rittenhouse as well as every other case that gets in the news, but just like you said, there's a lot of different stories to be told. And we want to make sure that our members are telling their true story through the eyes of the court and through expert witness and investigators and everybody else. And then, it's those he said, she said situations that, can really change the course of actions once that comes out. And so we want to make sure that's covered. And that's kind of why our benefits in our premium plan are there, is we know the difficulties that a member is going to go through after that fight. And we want to have that prepackaged up and not have to worry about what coverages to add or not. It's all right there in our premium coverage.
So basically what you're getting with FLP is a network. You're not only, getting that protection, but you've got a network of attorneys who also have network maybe of expert witnesses of all these different things that you're going to need in a scenario like this.
Absolutely. I mean, that's our big thing, is making sure we have the right network of attorneys in place for you. So it's not just you're going to end up getting any attorney that's out there. Our attorneys that represent our members in court have minimum of 5-year trial experience, and that trial experience is with firearm-related incidences. So they know what you're up against, they know how to handle it, and they also know if there's resources that they're going to need to reach out to, that A, they have that ability, and B, we're going to be paying for them. So it's not a case of, they're trying to figure out if they're going to do that or not. All those benefits are covered by FLP.
I don't see how people could look at something like this and not say, you know what, it's worth a Netflix membership, basically, or you're already paying for all these different services, right? $8, $9 here, there, that aren't doing anything for you. To have a service like this that it just gives you peace of mind knowing that, hey, if I ever have to defend myself, you know, um, I've got something that's going to back me up, you know. And if you think about it, I at first I wondered how a business model like this works, right? And you're like, how in the world can this actually work? Well, criminals are not going to go out there and buy this coverage. You know, bad people that plan on doing these things aren't going to go out and buy these type coverage. So I can see how it could work, you know, because you've got law-abiding people and you've got enough law-abiding people, you know, kind of pouring into the system to where it'll keep working.
Yeah, absolutely. And our model was from the beginning and still to this day is come out with a product that everybody can afford, because like you alluded to earlier, it's a law of numbers, and we're going to make sure that we can protect as many law-abiding citizens as possible. And we want to make sure that, like you said, it is the cost of another membership that they're using for entertainment purposes. But when they look at this, a lot of people go, hey, why is this so affordable? And that's the exact reason of why we were formed as a company, so that people will never have the option or have the thought process of, I don't think I'm going to carry a gun or a weapon today because I've heard it's going to cost $10, $20, $30,000 if I use it, and I don't have that. And it's like, when you think about it, it's like, what's the alternative if you don't have something to protect yourself? You know, a lot of people throw that out
Dying.
there. You know, every bullet has a attorney attached to it, and all the different slangs that are out there. But the truth is, like we've talked about, if you take the necessary steps to defend yourself, a lot of times you're not going to be portrayed as the good guy in the situation. And even if you are, there's still a series of events that has to transpire to make sure that you were justified in doing what you did.
Right. So can you go into pricing? What does this look like for somebody that maybe I'm standing at my local gun store's counter, I'm purchasing a gun. Can you walk me through what that purchasing process looks like, and maybe cover some pricing
Absolutely.
structure?
So what we have is we've got the ability to offer through our partners in CoreWare discount pricing that they're able to offer to all of their customers over the counter. And so if you were to go online, research our products, see the prices, they'll be a little bit different once you're able to have them explained to you to an actual person. And so, like I've been saying, we wanted to come out with a product that is affordable to everybody. So our entry level basic membership is $9.95 a month. We're talking $109 a year. And what that gives you is uncapped attorney fees, you know, from the very beginning to the very end. So I don't know if you've ever experienced dealing with an attorney before, but $109 for a year doesn't get you, past 15, 30 minutes with most qualified criminal defense attorneys in the area. And so that's
Right.
like, people are like, how, this is amazing, and it's why we came out with it. So included in that basic coverage, we also have red flag coverage, which is something that is huge right now in several states, and it's also sweeping the country as recent decisions and different bills and laws have been passed. And so we wanted to make sure that all of our members across the board had that as well. And so we've also included expungement benefits to our basic plan that members are able to take advantage of after they're done with the fight, making sure that their name is cleared going forward. So we really try to push that product to members so that they know that, hey, I'm covered. It does cover me, but there are some limitations on it. And I said earlier, there's going to be some other benefits that we include in our premium plan. So when you jump up to the premium pricing, you're not too much more. You're looking at $21.95 a month for the monthly product and $239 for the year. And this is really where we expand out on all the things we've kind of talked through on this talk, to where you get $250,000 worth of bail bond coverage, which we know is the second biggest expense after attorney fees that our members are going to face. They also get your expert witness fees, incident scene cleanup. There's a lot of things that we know will happen after that fight that we want to make sure our member isn't concerned with how to deal with. So those are kind of the two basic plans. There's a couple other benefits that we have as well, including like psychological counseling support. that we offer. And then our other plan is a family plan that is basically the same thing as our premium offering, but it covers you and your spouse and any kids that are in your household ages 17 or other. So that plan is $38.95 a month or $429 a year.
So, Scott, you're telling me that the red flag laws are really, I mean, they're sweeping the nation, as you know, and the expungement, those two things really piqued my interest. How would the red flag laws, or how would you guys protect my right to keep my firearm if someone were to say, hey, this guy's a threat to himself or others?
Yeah, exact same situation scenario as we talked about earlier with you. If you experience that, you would call the emergency hotline number, tell them everything that is going on, and immediately we're getting you again an attorney in touch with you to be able to handle that case.
That's awesome. So with an expungement, even if you don't use your gun, if you're arrested, that's on your record, right?
Yeah, every
So,
state's, yeah,
yeah, go ahead.
every state is different on how it's handled, what records are documented and what are not. But the last thing that we want across the board is for one of our members to lawfully defend themselves and then go to apply for a new job and they've got a murder, a murder accusation on their record or anything else that's on their arrest and something that they didn't do wrong at all.
Yeah, I don't think anyone thinks about that. You know, they think about, hey, I won the gunfight. Now I got to go to court. Hey, what's after court? You know what I mean? So it's actually 3 rounds. You know, I think we talked about this is a 2-round fight. It's actually 3 rounds because you got to go through the actual ordeal of defending yourself or using a weapon to defend yourself. Then you have to go through the legal system trying to do everything they can. And then if you want to make sure that you come out with no black eyes or anything once that fight's done. So it's really 3 fights, Scott. I never thought about it.
Yep.
Wow. So you guys cover all 3 rounds, man. I if you need somebody in your corner, these are the people you want in your corner for all 3 rounds of that fight. I'm telling you, man, this is really impressive. I'm so glad we're partnering with you guys, and our dealer base is able to offer this service right there at the register. Because the most opportune time to buy that coverage is when you're buying a firearm or any kind of weapon. So being able to do that right there at the counter. And not depending on your customer to walk out and go research it later, because you know that's not happening. You know how many pages I've saved that I'm going to go back and watch later, or no, YouTube videos. I've got thousands of YouTube videos that I'm going to watch later. I'm not watching those videos, man. You know what I mean? So you want to get them right there at the counter and make sure they walk out with that protection. That's a really good service you guys are offering. Is there anything else that you would like to cover as far as what sets you guys apart or anything like that?
I mean, really, it's how we operate as a company is we're here for our members, and that's why if you followed along or been a member for a while now, you've seen we've had several different benefits that have been added, like we just talked about with red flag and expungement, and we want to constantly be taking a step ahead for our members to be able to make sure that the second and third fight, everything is covered. And we're really excited to partner up with CoreWare and be able to get this in front of that many more individuals, because like we've talked about, if we can get somebody to understand why they need the coverage, whether it's our service or somebody else, people are going to take advantage of that. And that's what we want ultimately. We don't ever want somebody hearing about our service after the fact, because it's same thing as car insurance. You can't wreck your car and then go start looking for coverage that's out there. And none of us, I don't believe, wake up and say, hey, today I'm going to get in a car accident. And same thing, hopefully aren't waking up saying, hey, today I'm going to have to legally defend myself. But the reality is people get in car accidents and people have to defend themselves. And there needs to be somebody standing behind them with the coverage that is going to take care of them.
Right. So if you guys are interested out there, whether you're a gun dealer, you own a gun store, gun range, or you're just a regular consumer that's looking into a service like this, you can visit this website at the bottom of the screen. The best thing to do is find your local gun store or gun range, walk in and ask them if they offer that service. If they don't, tell them they need to, and tell them to reach out to FLP or CoreWare. And we'll see what we can do to help them as well. So that's really neat, Scott. I'm really excited for the future of how these 2 services are going to be able to help more people and get you guys exposed to more people. I think it's all, the sky's the limit, basically.
Absolutely. We appreciate it.
Hey, thank you guys so much for watching. Scott, thank you for putting aside this time to talk to us. This has been it's a wealth of knowledge that hopefully everyone else got as well, and it gives you all something to think about in regards to defending yourself, because we don't live in the same world. Even 10 years ago, it was completely different, where you could defend yourself, and right and wrong were kind of, the line was a little clearer. Now it's all blurry, so you really need a service like this to help you in that 3-round fight. So Scott, I think we need to probably trademark that or something, because usually you only hear about the 2-round fight. It's actually a 3-round fight, because the expungement, I don't think people realize how important that is, because that will follow you forever, even if you're in the right. So again, if you're interested in this service, you can visit the website at the bottom of the screen. The best thing to do, though, for those better prices, is to find your local gun store, gun range, and ask them about it. If they don't have it, tell them they need to get in touch with Coreware or FLP, and we'll see what we can do to get you those lower rates. So, Scott, thank you so much, man. We appreciate your time.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it, and appreciate everything that you and CoreWare are doing.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.